Hey everybody, welcome back to Vibe Code Camp. I'm Paul. In this second video, I'm going to try and break everything up into smaller bite-sized pieced videos so that you can go back and watch just the video about how to set up the IDE, or just the video on how to set up Django for our backend, or just the video for how to set up Supabase. But first things first, I just want to establish a couple of the main tools that we're going to be using. So, like I said in the first video, I'm not a professional developer. I could not do any of this without AI. I am truly a vibe coder. So the first thing we're going to do is get our IDE set up. IDE is just one of these fancy terms that developers and engineers over the years have coined, called an integrated development environment. It's just a way for you to look at the code that's being written, that you are writing or the AI is writing. You can think of Cursor very similar to Microsoft Word, where when you have a document like a contract or like a blog post or something that you're writing, where do you open that document? You open it inside of Microsoft Word. If you have a bunch of Python files that orchestrate how AIs all talk to each other and work in code, you don't open that in Microsoft Word, you open that inside of an IDE like Cursor, an integrated development environment. We're going to get Cursor set up first so that we can put all of the code that represents the front end foundation, the back end foundation, and the stuff that communicates with the database. We're going to get that set up so that we can see all of that inside of our IDE. But the way that we actually will make all of that code go into the TypeScript, React, Expo files, the Python and Django files, and the files that interact with the PostgreSQL database on Supabase, we're going to actually use the AI inside of Claude Code. So you can think of Claude Code like a highly specialized AI built by a company called Anthropic that is really great at writing code. Now, we could install Claude Code or use Claude Code inside of any IDE. You can use it outside of an IDE, and quite frankly, there's a lot of really great YouTube videos on how to use Claude Code for things that aren't related to code. It's really fascinating. But the point that I'm trying to make is we're going to have Cursor as our primary window into the code. Think of it like Microsoft Word. And then inside of Cursor, we're going to use the terminal, which is just a piece of Cursor. It's a feature of Cursor. Inside of the terminal, inside Cursor, we're going to run Claude Code. And Claude Code is going to help us set up all of the different pieces that represent the front end, back end, and the communication pieces with the database. And we may even get to the server, which is the cloud computer, in this video. So that's what we're going to work on. I'm going to try, like I said, to make this a bite-sizable video where you can watch individual pieces at a time, so you can go back and revisit them. But that's the whole scope of this video. Let's get started. So I already have Cursor on my computer, and I'll open it up here in just a second, but I just want to give everybody a quick primer on this. You can just go to cursor.com and download Cursor. Cursor, again, is the IDE. You just click download for Mac OS. And then once Cursor is downloaded, you can go to this website, anthropic.com/claude-code. And then this, don't be afraid of this. This is a command that you run inside of the terminal on your computer. Now, because I'm making this video for people that are like I used to be, where I didn't understand a single thing, this black box that is the terminal, it scared me. You can think of the terminal as a place for you to control your computer by typing things rather than clicking. So instead of going to a website and clicking the download button for Claude Code, we're going to put this command, which we could type, directly into the terminal, and that will go out and get the package that represents Claude Code and install it on our computer. And then Claude Code actually runs inside of a terminal window. Like I said, the terminal is going to be the terminal inside of Cursor. I hope all of that makes sense. It'll make more sense as we get into it. So you'll need to download Cursor from cursor.com, and then you'll need to install Claude Code. I'm not going to go over all of the specifics of how to install Claude Code in this video, but I will leave a link in the description of this video and in the accompanying documentation for this video that has a video that shows how to get Claude Code all set up. I promise it's like a 1 minute and 40-second long process. It's so easy. So once you have all of that stuff set up, we're going to go and open up Cursor. So over here inside of Cursor, you can see all of the projects that I've worked on. These are, you can just think of them like folders full of code files. Again, Cursor is just Microsoft Word for code. So I have this project set up. This is just a folder on my computer somewhere. So all I did was go to Finder and then create a new folder on my computer, and then I just go to Open Project, and a project for this video is just an empty folder that we will fill with code files. So I'm just going to open this empty folder. This is our project. You can see it's called AI Scheduler VCC for this series of videos. Now, here inside of Cursor, this is the first thing that you'll see whenever you see a blank project. So this on the right over here is Cursor's chat. This is where you can chat with the AI that's built inside of Cursor, and it's great. I'm not going to go over that right now because, like I said, we're going to use Claude Code for this project. But if you wanted to, you could effectively do all of the same things with this chat over here inside of Cursor that I'm going to do with Claude Code. So I'm going to close this, and now we're here inside of the blank project. On the left side over here, this is your file explorer, where all of the files and all of the folders of code files will be stored. And as Claude Code writes code, they'll show up over here. Now, the most important thing that we need to do once you have Claude Code installed on your computer and you have Cursor open is open up the terminal. So you can go up to your menu bar and click Terminal and then click New Terminal, or on your keyboard, I like to do Control, Shift, and then the button above Tab. That opens up a new terminal. So here, this is the place where you can type commands that control your computer instead of clicking on them. And this is where Claude Code runs. Claude Code is what's called a CLI tool, a command line interface tool. This terminal is also known as a command line interface, where you tell the computer what to do in the command line. So I already have Claude Code installed on my computer, and all I have to do to get it started inside of this project is write the word Claude. Okay, and then Claude Code will come up and say, do you trust the files in this folder? And it gives me the path. The path is just this location on my computer. So users, Paul Wakeham, desktop, Paul's projects, VCC, and then AI Scheduler VCC. So all of these are folders, and then the actual project is the last one called AI Scheduler VCC. That's the path to the file. You can think of it like the directions that your computer is going to follow for all of the code that's inside this project. So I'm just going to click Yes, Proceed. And then here we go. We have Claude Code all set up and running. Now that we have Claude Code set up inside of this project, we can get started telling Claude Code what we want to do. Eventually, what we will also do is create a .claude folder inside of our project, and that .claude folder will hold things like the claude.md file. The claude.md file is like telling Claude, hey, this is what we're working on. But for right now, we don't need to do that. We just need to tell Claude to get the project set up for us. So to use Claude Code, all you have to do is come down here into this grayish black box, and you have to just tell it what you want to do. So I'm going to use a program that's this little icon down here called WhisperFlow to speak to Claude Code what I want to do. So here we go. Can you help me set up the front end and back end directories of this project and nothing else, just to get started? And to do that, all I had to do was hold down FN on my keyboard once WhisperFlow is installed. So I'm going to send this message to Claude Code, and then this little orange text down here that kind of shimmers says that it's thinking. It creates a little quick to-do list for itself. And you can see create front-end directory structure, create back-end directory structure. Now, this purple box is important. You can see that it's asking for permission to run a bash command. A bash command, again, is just like the text that represents doing something on your computer. So I could come up here and just right click and then click new folder, but I could also type a terminal command. I could also type this specific terminal command that is mkdir space -p space front end, all of that. I could type all of that, but I'm not going to do that. I asked Claude Code to do it. So it's asking for permission here inside this purple box. So I'm just going to click, I'm going to scroll down to yes, and don't ask again for make dir commands. That's make directory commands. What that will do is save inside Claude's brain, hey, Paul said it's okay to run make directory commands inside of this project. So I just use the arrow keys on my keyboard to go down to yes, and then I hit enter. And we can see that the .claude and backend and frontend folders, also called directories, were created. So if we open up this .claude folder directory that was created, you can see this settings.local.json file. What's inside this file is the permissions. You can see permissions allow a bash command, make directory, and then the little star here means all commands that start with mkdir:. So I'm saying to Claude, next time don't ask me, you're just allowed to run bash commands that are make directory. Now that we have Cursor and Claude Code set up, and we have the front end and the back end directories set up, before we start writing any real code with Claude Code, the next thing is going to be to set up Git, G-I-T, not G-E-T. Git you can think of as by far one of the most important pieces of any coding project, but don't overcomplicate it. Git is just a way to save your progress as you proceed through your project. So if you type a Microsoft Word document and you add a couple commas and you correct some grammar and then you click save, unless you sit there and do Control Z or Command Z and undo, all of those changes that you made are hard to undo. But with something like Git, you can commit or save your progress as you go and then rewind back to previous steps. So to give you a practical example, whenever we have Git set up, we're going to get a lot of the back-end code written that structures the back end of this project. Let's say for some reason it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, we need to be able to undo all of those changes without sitting there and doing Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. And to do that, we can tell Claude Code to run a git, remember G-I-T, a git command that will go back to our last save point or our last commit. You can kind of think of the commits like checkpoints in a video game. If you make it so far and then you mess up and you die and you need to go back to your previous checkpoint, the computer will save where you were the last time you made a commit. So when we get Git set up, we'll have to make sure that we do lots of commits so that we can rewind to previously working code. I could go through the entire process of setting up Git manually by typing the commands, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have Claude Code help me with that. I need your help setting up Git for this project. I already have a GitHub account, but I do not have a repository yet for this project. Can you tell me the steps that you need me to do manually and then help me get the Git set up for this project so that we can start writing code and making commits? And then I'll just send that message. And you can see Claude Code comes back with its to-do list, and then it gives me the manual steps that I need to do. Now, once that little orange sparkly text goes away, we know that it's done thinking. So I need to go to GitHub. I need to click on the little plus button and make a new repository. So let me do that right now. So here we are inside of my GitHub. You can think of repositories like the projects that I've worked on saved out inside of GitHub. So just like you can save files to a flash drive and then take that wherever you want, you can save files to Google Drive and access those wherever you want. GitHub is just like that. Don't overcomplicate it. We're just going to create a place inside of GitHub as this external service to save our progress to. So I'm going to create a new repository up here, and then Claude Code told me to call it AI Scheduler VCC. So that's what I'm going to call it, AI Scheduler VCC, and I'm going to make it private. If it was public, anybody who had my profile could come in and see all of the code. And it says, do not check add readme file or add.gitignore or choose a license. We'll set these up locally, which means we're going to set these up on the computer instead of out inside of GitHub. Locally just means on your own computer, not out in the cloud or on a website. Okay, and then we'll click Create Repository. Okay, now this is the screen that you'll see once your repository is created. This is pretty much the only time that you will see this screen whenever you're inside of the Code tab in your repository. This is the tab that says, hey, connect to me. Here are the instructions on how to connect to me. So I'm just going to take this HTTPS URL here, and you can see it ends in .git. I'm going to click this little button to copy it, go back, and I'm going to say, here is the URL from GitHub. And it says, perfect, now I'll help you set up Git for this project and connect it to your GitHub repository. Again, it's asking, can I run the bash command that says git init. Init means initialize. So it's asking, can I initialize Git inside of this project? Again, can I initialize GIT inside of this project? So I'm going to say yes, and don't ask me again. So it initialized Git inside the repository. The repository is the project. And then it's asking me if it can add a remote. A remote is its connection to GitHub. So a couple things to note here. When you set up Git, you set it up in two places. You set it up on your computer, like you can save all of your progress and rewind to those various save points, which are called commits. You set that up on your local computer, and you set it up inside of GitHub so that you have access to those previous commits, those previous save points in the cloud on another service, GitHub. So it's asking me, can I set up the connection between your local Git, which we just initialized, and GitHub? And I'm going to say yes. So again, it's just running the command here that says git remote add origin, and then it takes that URL that I gave it. Okay, now it's asking git add space dot. That means, hey, can I add all of the files that have been changed to Git to prepare them to commit them? Which is essentially saying, hey, do you mind if I take all of the changes that we've made to all of the files and prepare them for saving? And I'm just going to say yes. Okay, now it says git commit space dash m space and then quotes. What this is doing is it's adding a message to the save point. So each commit has a long string of numbers called a hash. It's characters, it's numbers and letters, but nonetheless it has a hash that represents your save point. In addition to that hash that represents your save point, each commit also has a message that's human readable that says initial project setup with front end and back end directories, and then you can see that Claude Code automatically adds this commit or this message to the commit. A little robot generated with Claude Code with the URL. And then it adds co-authored by Claude, and then it ends with a closing quote. So I'm going to say yes. And then you can see that those files up here that were once green are no longer green. That's because they have been committed. Okay. And then it says git push you, origin, master, all this is saying is, hey, are you okay with me sending this commit of code, all the changes you've made, out to GitHub and saving it in GitHub? And I'm just going to say yes. Okay, so before I show you what we've done, one of the things I want to go over that I feel is really important, and it's more or less my preference, but I feel like it's good practice. You probably saw that in some cases I said yes and don't ask me again, and then in other cases I said to Claude Code just yes. That's because whenever Claude Code is doing things for me that represent staging files to be saved, committed, or actually committing files, I want to see which files it's acting on and writing those commands for. I don't want it to just take its own liberty and do it by itself. I want to be able to see it and confirm whether or not it's correct. I like to do that because there will be other services like our server later on in future videos that look at our commits that we make to Git. And sometimes I don't want specific code to be saved to Git, which would then be sent to our server, and then users would be affected by it, or users would have that code. We're getting a little bit too ahead of ourselves. Whenever Claude Code wants to do things with Git, just make sure that you don't always say, yes, you can do whatever you want, don't ask me. Specifically when it comes to committing code and staging code, which were the commit and add space period messages that we just went over. Okay, now let me show you this inside of Cursor, and then I'll show you what happened inside of GitHub. So this little branch thing here is called source control. And if we go over to our files, and I'm just going to put a new file in here called test.txt, we can see that this file turns green. If we go back over to the source control panel, we can see, hey, these are files that aren't yet committed to Git locally or remotely on GitHub. And just like we had Claude Code type that message out and stage and then commit all of the file changes, we can do all of that manually here inside of the source control panel. So I'm just going to do testing file commit. Okay, now I'm going to click the plus button here next to changes, which will stage all of the changes that we've made. Then I'm going to click this little drop down here, and I'm going to click commit and push. Commit means we're saving these file changes to our local computer, and then push means we're sending all of those changes off to GitHub as well. If I just clicked commit, it wouldn't send them off to GitHub as well. So I like to do commit and push. Okay, so I'm sure you saw that. Rewind a little bit if you didn't, but it was purple master down here and then blue master up here for just a split second. That's because we committed the files only to the master branch of our Git locally at first, and then a couple split seconds later, it committed them to GitHub. So now we have these two commits. And just like I said, you can think of these as your save points. You can roll back to previous commits if for some reason the code that was committed inside of this commit wasn't good and it had some bugs or it was broken or something like that. You could roll back to this point and operate with this working code. Again, think of them like save points. Okay, now I'll show you what's going on inside of GitHub. I'll refresh this page and we can see over here there are two commits. We're on the master branch and we can see the files that were committed inside of this most recent commit. So we can go in and we can look at the code that's inside of here. Now this is all on the internet. This is the beauty of GitHub. This is the beauty of Git. All of this code is saved not on our computer, but it's saved out in GitHub. So you could go to your friend's computer and you could clone, download this repository full of code to your friend's computer, and you could operate on his computer much like you operate on your own. Okay, so I feel like that's Git. I hope that all of that makes sense. If you have questions about Git or GitHub, send me a message or leave a comment, but I feel like we have everything set up correctly with Git and GitHub.